Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Comics Cube. Today we're talking about Criminal.
Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Yeah, Criminal by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Been going since the year 2006, spanning multiple publishers, spanning multiple volumes, stretching into the current decade. What do you think of Criminal, Duy?
I love it. I didn't so I discovered it very late because there was a time that I was kind of avoiding indie comics because I don't know if you remember this, and maybe it's even still true today, but I felt like a lot of Image comics especially felt like they were testing grounds for a TV show or a movie. Do you know what I mean?
There was an era where all comics sort of followed a formula and it seemed like a screenwriter's formula. It seemed like the dialogue, the camera angles. There's just a stretch of comics where comics were angled towards media adaptations.
Right. So that's why I was like, well, I'm just not gonna read it. But then I was told about this one, The Last of the Innocent.
That's a
Because
special issue,
it's a
a special mini series.
it's a special mini series, and I think the thing about The Last of the Innocent was it plays off of Archie comics, and I love Archie
Hmm.
comics, and I thought this was a thing where, and this is always gonna get me when it comes to comics. It's when you say it's something that only comics can do, then I'll go pick it up. So I picked it up.
Hmm.
I got addicted. I bought the whole series up to that point. And ironically, funnily, Last of the Innocent has ended up being my least favorite volume.
I would say that is a great volume. It's one of the Eisner Award winning volumes.
Yes.
2000 winner of the 2012 Eisner Award for Best Limited Series. It was the final volume that was published through Marvel Icon, and I would agree with you. I would say that the miniseries, the criminal stories that don't focus on the Lawless family or the characters that are directly related to the Lawless family, that's kind of like the Halloween 3 of Criminal, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch,
It's like it's
where
nice that
where
they're there.
if it was a story that didn't say criminal on the cover, it would be great. But since it's criminal, but then doesn't tie into the Lawless family, it's just a good story.
I agree. I agree
Yeah,
with that. So were you there from the
yeah.
beginning?
So I read it. I read it in 2006 when it came out because Ed Brubaker had really captured me with his Captain America work, and I read the first two volumes and liked it. It wasn't really until the whole series was exported to Image Comics and it was completely re-released with like the new trade dress that made it look more like pulp
Yeah.
magazines from decades past. That was when I really like I picked them all up
So this is
and
from the
and gave
Marvel
them all a
series,
reread.
and this is from the Image series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that new trade dress, and I've been wanting to give the whole series a reread, and it was like around that time frame, like 2015 or so, when they came out with magazine size special editions, and they re-released all the trade paperbacks. So I bought all of the trade paperbacks with that same trade dress, reread them, and really like got back into it.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when it came out, I mean it immediately struck me as a passion project by both Brubaker and Phillips.
I see that.
I mean, it wasn't the first book that they did together either. Like they had done Sleeper and
Scene of the
Point
Crime.
Blank. Scene of the Crime, yeah. I don't know
The
that one.
It's the first one that they did, but it's a little bit of a cheat because Michael Lark was on pencils and Sean Phillips was inking.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But
What
technically
publisher
speaking,
was
it's
that
the
one through?
first one they did. Let me. Well, what the copy I have is from Image. Yeah, Scene of the Crime. Put
Yeah,
that on your list, Joe.
I will. Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta fill in the blanks. Fill in the.
Incognito too, right? It was already out by then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Incognito.
I see. I think for me is like the thing that puts Criminal apart from Incognito and Sleeper is just the more grounded Brubaker and Phillips get, the better they are for me. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people love those, and obviously, like their Captain America run is the best Captain America run of all time. But for me, it's like one of the reasons I love Criminal is because like it's specifically not that.
It's so grounded, so street level, so believable. It's like,
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, Captain America, like some of the best parts of Captain America are that it brings elements of criminal into Captain America. Captain America keeps it pretty grounded as well.
Yeah,
Adds a lot of believability to more supernatural and like spy thriller, but keeps it grounded on the scale of a superhero comic.
yeah. Let's not forget that a huge portion of their Captain America run, of Brubaker's Captain America run, doesn't even have Steve Rogers in it.
Hmm.
Right? So it
That's true.
really does ground it. Do you do you have a favorite character in this book, in this series?
For me, it's Tracy Lawless.
Really?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, yeah, I was asking my wife today what she thinks of the name Tracy for a boy, just in case we had another kid. But no, I really like the Lawless family. Just like so,
Tracy works both for both genders, Joe.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the whole Lawless family, like the fact that like the story is told out of sequence and they create this mystery of what happens to Teague Lawless and and the history of the Lawless family and how Leo factors into their it just into the history of the family. It's like a dynasty almost.
Absolutely. Um, my favorite character is Leo Patterson, the
You
who's the
like
title character of Coward. So he is very directly related to the Lawless family, but I just really like it's. I find it very relatable because I think as an adult, I've learned more and more about the value of restraint. Right? Like you don't,
mm,
you pick your fights. You don't go off on everyone. You don't pick a fight on the internet with people and going on message boards to just to tell them off and that kind of thing. So like I think with that kind of thing, I felt more the value of restraint, and I think that Leo Patterson shows that particular trait more than virtually any character I can think of, other than maybe a really well done Superman.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
You think like the rules that he applies and like he gets into situations where he has to break his own rules and
And he's got a
work
sense of
within the
honor, right?
system that he's in. Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah, he's got a
definitely.
sense of honor. He still wants to do the best for everyone around him. Uh, and I think that's the thing. And I think when you get to the very end of Criminal, assuming that Cruel Summer is in fact the end of Criminal, I think it really does show like a lot of depth to his character.
I think I think Cruel Summer was like such a satisfying conclusion to 14 years of storytelling.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So are we doing spoilers here, or like?
We may as well.
So
We
when
may as well.
Leo, yeah, when it's revealed that Leo had killed Lawless, and that Leo's dad takes the fall for Leo's action,
That is at the
it's
end
just
of the
like,
first volume, which is Coward. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just like it's like putting the cherry on top of a 14-year story, 14-year Sunday of a story.
Yeah. So to let people know, at the end of Coward, which is where we meet Leo, so Leo is the first character we meet. And then they all talk about how his dad killed Lawless, and Lawless was the biggest big boss of the city. And so his dad killed Lawless, and at the very end he reveals that he's actually the one who killed Lawless. But we've never actually shown it until Cruel Summer, which is the very last one, is so much thicker than everything else. And we're actually shown that he actually did in fact kill Lawless. So you kind of the crazy thing about that, Joe, is that it's coming, right? Like it's coming. But then when it still happens, you're still like, yeah.
Justice. Because like, and I would say like part of the slow burn of the series, and like the series being told out of sequence, is that over the years the stories of Teague Lawless, where he would, the way that he would treat the other characters, you'd just see the stories that starred the son's generation, the Tracy Lawless, Ricky Lawless, and Leo, and get to like them, get to know them, and you'd see the stories of Teague Lawless with the kids, and he was never a good dad. He always kind of he always made me his actions. He didn't treat his kids good, and he always the fact that he was eventually going to get what was coming to him, like I was waiting for that justice to be fulfilled.
Yeah. And when we're doing that, though, let me just read this out loud because I thought this was beautiful. I was rereading this last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Leo is about to kill Teague, right? I mean, look at this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
listen to this, right? Like, right before he pulls the trigger, Leo sees what he's doing. Like, he's watching it from outside. He sees the ripples that will come from this moment. The neighbors are in their yards, so there'll be no covering it up. The police will be here in minutes. And Tommy Patterson won't let his son go down. No, he'll take the blame. He'll go to prison for Leo's crime and he'll die there someday. And Ricky, this won't save Ricky, not really. It'll just be another thing that kills him slowly. But he pulls the trigger anyway, and the whole world explodes. That is poetry.
Yeah, no doubt.
That is great wordsmithing. That is great writing.
Yeah, that's Brubaker. That's peak Brubaker. Peak Brubaker wordsmithing.
Yeah, I love it. All of it is I feel like, what is it? You said 15 years of storytelling? Like,
About that. So
how many
2006 to 2020. So
yeah,
14.
14 years of storytelling. How many people do you know retain that same level of quality and dedication through 14 years on one thing? You know what I mean?
I'd I'd say two people, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Exactly. That's it.
I can't. Yeah, I can't think of anyone else.
You talk about the
I
great
mean,
comic book runs ever, right? And I think one of the things that uh I have learned when we're talking about great comic book runs is you have things like, people say Claremont and Byrne X-Men. But really we only remember certain bits of the Claremont and Byrne X-Men, right? We don't really remember anything past Days of Future Past. You know what I mean? Or Wolfman Perez Teen Titans, or even Frank Miller's Daredevil. Like, there's very few people who remember the whole thing. But I feel like
I,
something like Criminal, you can enjoy the whole thing.
almost like he planned it that way. And I think like part of Criminal coming out in this era, Brubaker knew that it was going to be an evergreen story. He knew that it would always be reprinted, always be available, and he wrote it to be timeless, you know? So it takes place in the past, takes place like in the 70s and the 80s, and it's it never it never fell into like the monthly grind. It was always a special event when a criminal book came out, and Brubaker put his best into it. He put his best self into it, and it was always of the utmost quality.
I agree because he and Phillips too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Because everything that happens here, I think when you talk about the way he planned it, I'm amazed at the idea of them even planning it. Because what, 14 years in a non-linear story? Like, how do you even know? How do you even keep track, right? Like, put yourself in their shoes. Like, how do you even keep track? There's this one volume here, The Dead and the Dying, right? Which is three connected stories, which then connect to the larger picture. I'm like, I don't even know how you would slot that in your mind, like how you would
Hmm.
organize that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think I read that he didn't have like an outline that he was following either. He knew he was eventually going to get to Teague Lawless's death, but I think I read that he was just writing stories as he went, and he didn't have it all planned out to start.
That's crazy because it really does feel like what the whole tapestry is there from the very beginning, and he's just deciding which portion of it he's going to tell us at any
Hmm.
given time. I have a qu-
So
I have a question for you, Joe. Like,
lay it
um,
on me.
now that it's over, would you like to see perhaps other writers and artists take a crack at the world of Criminal?
I wouldn't. I think it would dilute it. I think keep it to Brubaker and Phillips.
And
I
you think
think
they're done? Like, would you want to see more
no,
Brubaker and Phillips on Criminal?
I think they'll come back to it. I think
Okay,
they're going to take a break and eventually come back to the story. But I mean, I think that the world is rich enough that they could tell more stories within the criminal world. Um, but like I'm just saying, don't dilute it with too many stories. It's like part of what makes it special is like it's the Watchmen of Crime Comics.
it
There's not
really is.
there's not too many stories, you know.
What
Like part of what made Watchmen special is that there were those 12 issues collected, and it's a perennial bestseller because if somebody wants to read one of the greatest comics, they get Watchmen. If you want to read one of the greatest crime comics, you can point to these you know 6 volumes of Criminal, or 8 volumes of Criminal. But like, I mean, I think we could expand it to 9 or 10 or a couple more, and it would still be great. But there's no need to put out a monthly Criminal comic in perpetuity just for the sake of having a Criminal comic. Let's save it for Brubaker and Phillips. Keep it special. Keep it tightly knit, and keep it as something exclusive.
I agree with that. And I think, as I think I mentioned it earlier, like even if they never come back to this, I'm so happy with Cruel Summer. I'm okay if that's it.
One thing that I really love about Brubaker and Phillips' later work is how they are doing original hardcover graphic novels, which we'll get into in a future video with Reckless. But like that format of a straight to hardcover graphic novel was pioneered by Criminal with
Oh.
with My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, Bad Weekend,
Yeah.
and I love what they're doing with releasing it in a hardcover and then really taking care of the comic shops and providing the opportunity for comic shop owners to buy a signed book plate to sell with the comic. I mean, there's like that personal stamp of that signed book plate. It just like it's just it really makes the story something special.
And it puts you, it feels like you as the reader or as the retailer have a personal connection with Brubaker and Phillips
Hmm.
in a way that you don't with people from Marvel or from DC or from other publishers, because specifically because of that bookplate.
And I love that other publishers have taken that on, and I wish like even Marvel and DC would offer that sort of opportunity. Like so far only like Brubaker is doing it with every book that he puts out now, which is awesome. And then like Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek did it with Astro City.
Oh, did they?
And
That's
yeah,
cool.
I've seen a couple others too, but I mean, no one has like no one is as dedicated to it as Brubaker and Phillips, where
Yeah.
they do a special. Phillips does a special illustration, and then both Brubaker and Phillips sign the printed book plate.
J.H. Williams III just did it with Echo Lands.
Did he? Excellent,
Yeah, he
excellent.
did. I'll show it to you once we're done rolling.
Friend of the channel, J.H.
Friend of the
Williams.
channel, regular guest, J.H. Williams III. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that. I'm just going to take this time to complain about this book, right?
Uh huh.
This Eisner Award winning book, which was not marketed as a criminal book. And therefore I didn't buy it. So my heroes have always been junkies. I was like, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, I'll get to it eventually. And then found out later on that it was in fact a criminal book because it had a twist ending that ties to my favorite character, Leo Patterson. And that was really annoying, Joe. I'm just gonna tell you. Like I completely missed a whole criminal book for like 2 years because of because they did not market it as a criminal book. I'm very mad.
Why do you think they did that?
I think because it's a twist ending and it doesn't take place in what's the name of the town that criminal takes place in?
Good question. I don't know. I have to research that one and get back to you. Flip
Uh,
through the book while we chat here.
I'm sure it's
I
here
was
somewhere.
I was trying to make sense of that when it came out, like why they wouldn't have just like shouted it from the hilltops that it fits into their overall story. But I mean, you can also see the benefit of like taking it to a bookstore market and not having criminal on it, not having criminal volume 8 listed across it, and instead marketing it as a one of one story, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it works? So like let's put it this way. I think one of the reasons they didn't do it is because it's got a surprise ending. I mean, the girl's name is Angie, but
Hmm.
in the story she goes by Ellie, so her name is Angela. And that's the name of the kid in Coward, which is book one. So I think that if it had been marketed as a criminal story, it would have telegraphed that ending. So my question for you is, if you were in fact a reader who walked into the bookstore, picked up My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies with no prior knowledge of criminal, do you think it works?
I think it does. Yeah.
I
And I
think so
would
too, but
say,
I can't really say why because the ending is like so tied into criminal.
yeah. So it's like for a criminal reader, I could see how you could have held off on buying junkies for like 2 years or however long it was until you actually picked it up. If it if you didn't happen to catch somewhere along the way that it was in the criminal, line. But I would say that there's this story still has strength. I would say it still has strength if you're not a criminal reader, if you don't have the background from all those previous issues.
See, the effect on that now is like I take a look at every single thing they do, and I'm like, is this part of criminal? Like, Pulp?
I was looking at that too, and my mind was playing tricks on me because I thought that Pulp was connected to criminal, and I was trying to I was like, this is great, we can work Pulp in to one of our conversations finally, but it turns out Pulp is not, it's not tied
It's
to
not
criminal.
part of criminal.
It's written in the same style as criminal, but it's not criminal.
It, I suppose it theoretically could be.
It could be in that
It
universe.
could be in that universe, but it wouldn't matter to the criminal lore. That's
Hmm.
crazy. Like even when Reckless came out, like I was like, is this part of criminal? And now I'm pretty convinced it's not, right? Reckless is its own thing.
Yeah, yeah, Reckless is its own thing. So I think what I read was, prior to Pulp, Brubaker had a near death experience, and that informed the story of Pulp, where that character is towards the end of his life facing death. But what that near death experience also did to Brubaker was it made him really think about the stories that he was telling, and the format that he was telling them in, and it spurred him to stop writing for Marvel and DC altogether and focus on the straight to graphic novel format, which is working. I would say the straight to graphic novel format, straight to hardcover with a paperback following. I would say that it is. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I think it's rare, but like for me, okay, so I had previously been holding off on purchasing the work until it was collected in trade paperback or hardcover. So to flip that, I think Brubaker just knows his audience so well. He's trained his audience so well by writing for the collected edition over the
Yeah.
years that now he knows everybody who's buying his work prefers the trade paperback or hardcover collection. So, he knows his audience so well that he's delivering what his audience wants, which is that big chunk of story at one time with a structured story with a satisfying ending built in.
I feel like there's two conversations going on here because I do agree with you it's working, but I also think it's only working for Brubaker and Phillips.
Yeah.
It's
Tell
like,
me more about that. Let's dig
well,
into that statement.
well, think about it, right? It's like saying like, oh yeah, crime comics are so great now. It's like, no, there's one crime comic that's great.
Right.
It's whatever Brubaker and Phillips are doing.
Yeah, these guys know about crime comics.
Exactly, because even Rucka was Greg Rucka was one of my first guests ever on the show, and he flat out
Hmm.
told me he was like, the only reason Stumptown comes off as noir was because Matthew South was drawing it. He didn't intend to write it as noir, which is why it's like Dex is kind of it's kind of a comedy if you really read it. So he didn't intend to, and he's like, the reason he didn't want to write it as noir is Brubaker's got that covered. So I feel
Uh,
like this whole thing, because like you see things like Black Label, where they're putting out thicker, DC's putting out thicker, bigger prestige volumes, which I think is a great idea because it emphasizes the need to get it as a physical copy as opposed to getting it
hmm.
on digital. But
Right.
then even that leads into a collection, so it will be three volumes, and you put it into a collection. With Brubaker and Phillips going into straight to graphic novel format, they're the only ones who really do it. Like I think everybody else is tied to that 20-page monthly structure. You got Jeff Johns on and Gary Frank on Geiger. You got Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda on Monstrous. They're still following that format. Only Brubaker and Phillips are really doing it, and I'm wondering why more people aren't following. And I have one theory about that, which is that Sean Phillips is unbelievably fast because they put out 2 Reckless books this year and 2 last year. Am I
Let's
right?
think about that. Was it 3 last year? Was it, I know they did. Well, one just came out.
One just came out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So other artists, the average artist
yeah.
who would sell a book by virtue of his name alone or working with a writer who would sell the book could probably do one of those every 18 months.
Right. I see what you're saying. So it's like because of the level of detail that many of the top illustrators are putting into their work, they can't hit 12 issues per year. It's like the most highly detailed illustrators are doing like 10 issues per year rather than 12.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean Phillips, something about his style lends to meeting the page rate to do the equivalent of 12 issues per year or 2 6-issue equivalent standalone graphic novels. So I would say that's a big part of it. I would say Sean Phillips um, ability to meet the page count that would be required to put out a hardcover graphic novel. That's a big part of it. But I feel like there's more to it. I feel like you know there's other there's got to be other factors at play here.
Okay, I got another factor for you. How many
Let's say
people, how many writers and artists pair up and stay together
for 20
for
years,
20 years? It,
a lot of them stay together, but for 20 years, that's really rare.
I can name one other pair, Tom DeFalco and
Yeah.
Ron Friends.
Oh yeah.
Right? I feel like we get more stories about people who pair up, do great work together, and end up hating each other. Chris Claremont and John Byrne, Stanley and Jack Kirby, you know,
That list
Alan
is
Alan
endless.
Moore and Dave Gibbons. So like, well, not that they hate each other, but like you know what I mean? Like they just stop working together. So like
Right, right, right.
who does that for like,
Yeah.
well, I guess
Who has
Alan
a
Moore and Kevin
successful
O'Neill.
collaboration? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill have stayed together for 20 years. But who does that, right? Because what
Yeah, at
happens if
Brubaker.
Sean Phillips leaves and Brubaker has to get another artist? You think this continues? I don't think so.
I doubt it.
I agree. What else? Do you have
So,
any other
and
theories to it?
something about just like the fact that it's so much it's so much them. You know what I mean? Like their personal interests are baked into the stories. You know what I mean? It's like their own favorite kind of storytelling. So I think a lot of it is like the fact that they just pour their whole selves into the stories. Whereas it's not like Brubaker went out and hired an artist. It's like they're telling the stories that they want to tell, you know? Like Image didn't hire them, Marvel didn't hire them. Like it started out as a Marvel book in Marvel's Icon line, but I think that was more like Marvel didn't want Brubaker's writing to be at any other publisher than Marvel. Marvel wanted all Brubaker titles to be coming out under Marvel, and still though, it's like that was like the one issue that Brubaker was like the one story that Brubaker was telling for himself. He told Captain America for the fans. He told Secret Avengers for Marvel to pad the output, um, and however many dozens of other stories he wrote for Marvel. But even those ones were high quality. But it's like Criminal was always the one that he that was him, you know? And I would say that like maybe it's just that like most creators, they you know, they're still looking for that, or once they find it, maybe they don't have like, you know, an odyssey to tell, you know, or maybe they choose to like once they find that story that they want to be more succinct with it. They don't want to go on indefinitely. They want to, you know, tell their story and then move on to another story.
Joe, what is your favorite issue of Criminal? Or
Excellent,
volume of Criminal? Yeah.
excellent question. So, like I said, the stories that focus on the Lawless family are the greatest of these issues. So, there's Volume One, Coward, and then the second story in Volume One, which is Lawless. So that's Volume Two in the trade paperback line. So Volume One focused on Leo, and then Volume Two, Lawless, that focused on Tracy Lawless. And it was like the aftermath of Ricky Lawless's death, and you know that was where the universe really started to get built out.
Speaking of which, how brilliant is it that we never actually see Ricky Lawless until Cruel Summer?
Is that, man? Is that true?
No, we only
That's a long.
ever hear about Ricky Lawless all the time, but we never actually see him until Cruel Summer.
That's a long time to wait, man. Wow. See, I'm somewhat biased towards Cruel Summer, having just read it recently. Like, I would say all the criminal stories that came out under like since 2015 have just been just like just like so tightly knit and so like um so wonderfully executed. I would say every the special editions that came out under Image, the two magazine size special editions, My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, Bad Weekend, and Cruel Summer was just like like, you know, like a flurry of punches, a flurry of knockout punches. But I've got to say, I'd say Cruel Summer. I'd say Cruel Summer is the greatest of these. So Cruel Summer that wrapped up the whole Lawless storyline, Lawless Leah Patterson storyline, and wrapped it up with a bow. I'd say that's the greatest of these.
What do you think
So
of these collections though? The Dead and the Dying, Bad Weekend, Bad Night, the smaller ones, I think.
Bad Weekend I liked a lot. That was the one at the comic store or the comic convention, right?
Yeah, it's the one at the comic convention. Did you pick up that the cartoonist's name is Jake Kurtz? Jacob Kurtz. Is it Jake Kurtz? Jake
I
Kurtz, yeah.
I did, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very close to Jack Kirby, right?
Jack Kirby's real name is Jacob Kurtzberg. So
Interesting.
little Easter egg there for everyone. Thought that was pretty cool. This is the one that I don't really register, I think. Wrong time, wrong place.
Yeah, that was a special story, being that was the two special editions. They came out under Image in magazine size format. Then they were collected in the trade paperback format to fit with the earlier six volumes.
And but it gives you a really, really interesting look into Teague Lawless and a young Tracy Lawless. So
Yeah, yeah, sort of like a lone wolf and cub vibe, right?
yeah, except if the lone wolf was a complete asshole.
Yeah, not the best. Turn the lone wolf and cub vibe on its head.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think so. Here's a weird thing, Joe. I don't really like crime stuff. I've never made it all the way through The Godfather.
Mhm.
I've I can't watch The Sopranos. All of that stuff. Like I don't know why, but somehow crime comics, but especially criminal, they just really get me. Like I can't get enough of it. So like Reckless is the one series where once I get it in the mail, I have to immediately open it up and read it. Everything else I can wait like a few days or a week or however long. I have to read Brubaker and Phillips's crime stuff immediately the moment I get it. I don't know what
Do
it
you read it
is,
in one sitting too?
and I read it in one sitting. I don't know what it
Same
is.
here.
Yeah, what do you think that is? What is so compelling about them?
I don't know. I think it's there's something brilliant about it. Something about the way that they um the mysteries that they set up and the structure of the storyline. I would say in modern comics, storylines are structured and there's still, chapter by chapter cliffhangers, and there's still but like they're written for the trade paperback, they're written for the collection, but there's something about the structure of Brubaker and Phillips' work that just really lends itself to the pacing of just, you know, you can't stop reading it.
I agree. I
Yeah.
can't. Before I know it, I've lost my whole morning. Which, speaking of, the latest Reckless just showed up at my doorstep, so I'll be reading that later.
Did you get the signed book plate?
I don't know. I probably did.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally worth it. Totally worth it. So like for me, a lot of my collected editions, I'll buy them from websites like Amazon or in stock trades, but like it's made the purchase at the comic store essential to get that signed book plate.
I agree because I think the latest Recklesses, I have all the signed book plates. I think it's
Hmm.
a I think it's a great addition. It's a great value add to the comic itself. The comic itself is already really good, right? So in general, like finish the sentence for me. Like for the people watching who haven't read Criminal, okay? You should read Criminal if you like blank.
Okay, I like it. I like it. If you like Sin City, if you like crime stories if you like the greatest comics that have ever been written, that have ever been committed to paper, you should read Criminal. But I would say if you want to liken it to something, I would say it's Sin City but grounded in real world.
Yeah, there are no ninjas in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it would be if you're a superhero fan and you like the crime elements of Daredevil,
Hmm.
or if you like Gotham Central, or you know that first volume of Batman No Man's Land where Batman isn't in it and it's just the Gordon and the cops trying to establish territory after the earthquake. Yeah,
Hmm.
so like that one. So, and if you like, if you're a superhero fan, and if you like any story that focuses on Lois Lane or Clark Kent but doesn't have Superman showing up, I think you would enjoy Criminal. If you're coming from TV or movies, I suppose just in general, if you like the crime genre, you like Criminal. But I think the way that I would really describe it is if you like and Last of the Innocent is very this does not hold true for the Last of the Innocent, but if you like seeing a tiny little light at the very, 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 very end of a very, very, very dark tunnel, then you should read Criminal. Does that make sense? Because I feel
No,
like
I
in all of Criminal, no matter how bleak it gets, there is a tiny ray of hope.
oh man, I like the way you put that. I would say if you like nuanced storytelling, the thing that so that tiny ray of hope, I like the way you zeroed in on that, but I also like how you pointed out if you like comics starring Lois Lane, if you like comics where, if you like Batman comics where Batman doesn't show up, if you like so okay, so in line with that, if you like the nuance of comics without the bright colors of spandex costumes, you would like Criminal.
And I guess that's a wrap. Everyone click like, share, and subscribe, and join us next time for Reckless.
Yeah, right on.